Calling the meeting to order. This is meeting 119 of International Trade Committee. Good Monday morning to everybody. We will spend the first hour and a half with our witnesses that we have today and the last half hour to consider Mr. Savard Tremblay's motion from last week. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, September the 16th, 2024, the committee is commencing its study, Canadian Women and International Trade. We have with us today from the Réseau des Femmes d'Affaires du Québec, Ruth Vachon, Chief Executive Officer by video conference, and from Samdesk Canada Inc., Ashlyn Bernier, Chief Operating Officer, and from Women in Governance, Caroline Godsey, Founder and Chief Equity Officer by video conference. Welcome to you all. Thank you for making the time to be with the committee today. We will start with Ms. Vachon with an opening statement of up to 5 minutes, please. Oh, you're on mute. Can you? There you go. Please start again.
Merci de nous accueillir ce matin.
Thank you for having us here today. So, Réseau des Femmes d'Affaires du Québec has been active for 42 years and plays a key role in accompanying women entrepreneurs on the ground and to help them broaden their professional network. We help them at a local level and an international level. We work with them on private and public markets and the support of networking amongst female entrepreneurs. We help them to organize events to increase their visibility and to create structured networking. And we have developed our own expertise. We work with suppliers and those companies that are underrepresented rather, and have women running them. Over the last 14 years, we've been working on diversifying our suppliers, and we've been supporting women, especially in reaching the U.S. and in France, and being able to work with larger companies. So I'd like to talk to you about the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, or the WS, and how that it has helped us. It's played a crucial role in the last 5 years all throughout the women in entrepreneurship ecosystem. We've been supported by several different initiatives that have supported underrepresented groups and aiding them in creating relationships with other companies. So we've been working with women in all different sectors, such as manufacturing and the service industry. And we've been working to multiply business opportunities for them throughout Canada. We have an online platform in Canada called Maya. And this is an algorithm that connects women entrepreneurs with potential clients to increase their ability to be able to collaborate with them. Large companies post offers on our platform, and then we also facilitate procurement for public programs. And so we allow women to reply to these offers, to bid, and this facilitates a diversification of suppliers for women entrepreneurs. And women can also bid amongst themselves and work together. Over the past 3 years, we've been able to establish a solid foundation to meet specific needs for women entrepreneurs and large companies that are always looking for more underrepresented suppliers for their supply chains. Small companies often employ less than 50 employees. And for them, we're the ideal partner to be able to broaden their market access. Oftentimes, it's difficult for them to find openings into new markets. So we have been able to lay the foundations for a new, more inclusive business model in Canada. Canadian women need sustainable support on the ground. And for us, it's very important to have this financial support. And it's because we're not able to meet our goals without this funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, now on to Ms. Bernier, please.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ashlyn Bernier, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Samdesk, a technology company based in Edmonton, providing real-time crisis alerts and monitoring powered by artificial intelligence. Our clients include NATO, the UK Ministry of Defence, the US State Department, and major global companies like ExxonMobil, Ford, United Health Group, and Uber. Our technology helps organizations protect their people, assets, brands, and public safety. Today, I'm here representing Samdesk, but I'm also speaking as a member of the Council of Canadian Innovators. My goal is to share insights from our journey as a Canadian tech company expanding globally, and from my experience as a female executive, as well as offer recommendations on how we can better support women entrepreneurs in international trade. While I don't claim to be an expert on international trade policy, I do understand what it takes to build and scale a global business. That experience has helped me understand where government initiatives can play a crucial role and where they may fall short. Bear with me, but I believe one critical area is actually domestic procurement. If we want more small businesses and startups to succeed internationally, they first need opportunities at home. When the government buys domestically, it provides vital early revenue and product validation, helping businesses like ours refine products, attract investment, and build the confidence to scale internationally. Unfortunately, many small businesses struggle to access these opportunities. While programs like Innovative Solutions have good intentions, they haven't been effective for companies like ours. There's a need for programs that actively ensure Canadian SMEs are included in government procurement processes. Giving companies like ours a fair shot at selling to our own government not only helps us grow, but it also makes us more competitive on the international stage. The second issue is the focus of government programs and grants. Too often, these initiatives underemphasize the true driver of growth, revenue. For Canadian companies to succeed, they need to discover if there is a large market for their products or services as quickly as possible. And if there isn't, be encouraged to fail and move on to the next venture. This is especially important for programs which support women-owned technology businesses, where encouraging rapid validation and iteration is crucial. Companies should be encouraged to pivot or even fail quickly if their product doesn't meet market needs, and programs often inadvertently keep businesses operating when they should evolve. A third challenge is access to capital. Many Canadian companies, especially women-led businesses, face significant barriers when raising the funds needed to scale and expand internationally. Samdesk will have to look outside of Canada in the future, as the domestic venture capital pool is too small to support the level of growth that many tech companies need. Seeking growth capital from international investors will make it difficult to maintain our Canadian-controlled private corporation or CCPC status, which complicates access to certain government programs. This can reduce our incentive to keep operations in Canada, as the pull from international investors and customers often leads businesses to consider moving south of the border. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of Canada's trade commissioners. They are a valuable resource, but I believe they could be better equipped to support modern businesses, especially in tech. Enhancing the digital literacy of our trade commissioners and creating more opportunities for female entrepreneurs to network would better support Canadian businesses in global markets. In conclusion, I would like to leave the committee with 3 recommendations. First, leverage domestic procurement to provide early revenue and product validation for Canadian SMEs, ensuring they're better prepared to compete internationally. Second, focus government programs on helping SMEs generate revenue and validate a sustainable growth model, which is critical to long-term success and reduces dependency on government programs and grants. Last, upskill trade commissioners to better support businesses through e-commerce and digital channels and create more spaces for women entrepreneurs to network. Female entrepreneurs are a tremendous yet underutilized force in Canada's economy. With the right support, these businesses can not only succeed at home, but thrive on the global stage. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to discussing how we can better support women entrepreneurs in Canadians' international trade ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Ms. Codsey for up to 5 minutes, please. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself, please. There you go.
Okay, I just did. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Bonjour tout le monde. So I'm Caroline Kotz. I'm going to do this in English. I'm the founder and Chief Equity Officer at Women in Governance, also known as La Gouvernance au Féminin. Our core is around supporting corporate Canada to close the gender gap in the workplace. Unlike the REFAC, we don't work directly with entrepreneurs. We work with large corporations that want to bring women to the top of the house. And we've got more than 1 million people working for a parity certified organization. All the largest banks, financial institutions, insurance companies, etc. All the different industries, including a lot of government bodies as well, have been certified by our organization in both Canada and the US. Now, to dive into what is the focus of today's conversation, first of all, I'm truly honored to be invited to testify here today. And I will speak as myself, being a female entrepreneur. Women in Governance is going to be 15 years old in 2025, so not quite as old as the REFAC, but we've been around and we've done a lot. And we've also seen the negative impact in terms of achieving social equity when it comes to looking at how women are able to advance versus the men. And there's research from the BDC that reveals that leveling the playing field for women entrepreneurs could inject an additional $150 billion into the Canadian economy over the next decade. So I think despite what we see in terms of talent and in terms of tenacity, still women own less than 16% of Canadian businesses. So even if we do a lot of work at Women in Governance to support women through governance training, through mentoring, etc., I think it's a stark indication that there's still a lot of work needed to do, because it's not all on women's shoulders. There are structural barriers and funding disparities that have always existed that we still see today. And I think women entrepreneurs, especially those who are in early stage ventures, they encounter deeply ingrained structural barriers. Funding is amongst the most significant hurdles that women face. And according to the Brookfield Institute, I believe, women entrepreneurs not only receive less venture capital than their male counterparts, but they also face a higher likelihood of being forced to rely on personal debt. I mean, that's a scenario that just impedes scalable growth and sustainable success. So this funding gap is even more pronounced in traditionally male-dominated sectors like technology and science, where gender bias often results in a lack of confidence in women entrepreneurs. So these are sectors with immense potential for innovation, for economic growth, and women remain drastically underfunded and undervalued. So that obviously stifles their capacity to drive progress and to contribute to a diverse economy. Government programs are crucial, obviously, but they're not sufficient to close these gaps. So although there are grants and resources that have been made available, I'm not sure all women entrepreneurs even know where to turn. I can speak for myself, where I find it very complicated to navigate through the different government bodies, to know where exactly the pockets of money are, what is required. I think it would be helpful to, make it more, easier to find. I know some women are really good at working with some organizations who specialize in helping them find the funding, but I think it needs to be more accessible. I think also women need, more training, better networking, more mentoring, which is critical to their success. A holistic approach is really important. We need to address the unique challenges that women face. It's different from what men go through, because the EDC, Export Development Canada, reports that only 11% of Canadian exporters are women. So that reveals the limited reach of existing initiatives. I mean, in 2024, it makes no sense to me. Obviously, we've got the invisible burden of caregiving. Quebec is a leading province in terms of offering affordable healthcare. It's fantastic that the federal government has followed up, and it's now available across Canada. But I think this, still largely falls on the women. McKinsey & Company has documented how this dual responsibility, the need to manage both your household duties and professional ambitions disproportionately limits women's ability to scale their businesses, especially during critical growth periods where, you know, a lot of the women are actually at that age where they have still have young children at home. So without access to long-term and consistent support, women are often forced to make difficult choices between their personal lives and professional aspirations, a dilemma that not much men have to face, and that hampers economic advancement on a macro scale. So I think strengthening collaboration between government, financial institutions. I think we need to train people who make the decisions in terms of validating funding for women. They need to go through unconscious bias training, understand how you speak to women who are looking for financing. I think we need to raise awareness with these financial institutions that play a critical role in either enabling or hindering entrepreneurial growth. I think we need to support women in high growth industries, technology, AI, renewable energy, where women remain vastly underrepresented. And, you know, government-backed initiatives could target these sectors and provide these women with the resources and the confidence that they need to enter, but also to grow and lead within these fields.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Yes.
Codd. You'll have plenty of time.
I could go on for the whole day, honestly, but yeah,
we can hear that,
that
and it
gives
was fascinating. Well, you have members will be anxious to ask you lots of questions. We'll start with Ms. Gray for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here. My questions are for Ashlyn Bernier. The Council of Canadian Innovators commissioned a survey of entrepreneurs in July, which showed 90% of respondents believe the Liberals' capital gains tax hike would have a negative effect on the innovation economy. Do you agree with the overwhelming results of that survey?
I do.
You touched a little bit in your opening address about access to capital, and I know for myself as a former woman entrepreneur, when I was looking at this back in 2002, this was difficult, and in particular because I was a woman. And I actually recall a bank loan officer asking if my husband was coming to the meeting. I ended up actually getting a high interest loan through the Women's Enterprise Center, which is funded through Western Diversification, and it was for women entrepreneurs, and I was very thankful for that. We became a business that was top of our field, and we won local and national business awards. But my question for you is, are tech entrepreneurs, is one of their top challenges access to capital, and has it been more difficult because you're a woman?
I would say I would agree that a major challenge for tech entrepreneurs is access to capital. In a sense, it should be. Venture capital is competitive, and you should have or be able to demonstrate that there is going to be a return on that investment, a significant return made on that investment to venture capitalists that you're asking for funding from. I think as a woman, so I'm chief operating officer of my company. I'm not the founder, but I've been there for 7 years, the majority of the growth of the company. So squarely a member of the leadership team. And when we have raised venture capital, I've been in every meeting, every conversation with my CEO, who is a male. It has been interesting to observe the dynamic and how sometimes he's treated versus how I'm treated in some of those conversations. So I can only really speak from my experience and reading between the lines a little bit here. We've been very fortunate to have the chance to work with some venture capitalists who've been incredible, and actually our Series A round of funding, which is sort of a major milestone for a technology company. We raised a Series A in 2021 from McRock Capital based in Toronto, and the partner there we worked with is a woman. So that was a great experience for me to be able to work with her. Two of the partners there are actually female, but I would counter that with other experiences we've had with other institutions, venture capitalists who have, and again, this is just my perspective, but questioned my right to be in those conversations and in that room as not the founder, even though, based on my CEO's experience, I should be and need to be in those conversations in that room, but have definitely had to justify my participation in those discussions in the past.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Now, you did mention that you've gone through multiple fundraising rounds to raise money from investors, and investors expect a return on their investment, and they've invested under a certain pretense. However, the Liberal government has changed the goalposts, and investors will pay more taxes now. Are you concerned that your investors will now likely have to pay more capital gains taxes and have less of a return on their investment?
Yeah, that's absolutely going to impact us, and kind of goes to my earlier point of we're going to have to broaden our horizons as we look for venture capital in the funding in the future, and potentially look to the U.S. Where there's just a different system, and potentially lose our CCPC status, which also would prohibit us in the future from participating in the Entrepreneurs Incentive Program.
It's been widely reported how Canada's GDP per capita has dropped over the last 9 years, including when compared to Canada's largest trading partner, the United States, making Canada one of the worst performing advanced economies, which will continue for 40 years unless substantial changes are made to federal, fiscal, and economic policies. So my question is, will Canada be less competitive for talent, investment, or capital in the global market because of this capital gains tax hike?
I believe so, yes.
One of the things that you had talked about in your opening intervention had to do with domestic procurement, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. Specifically, we know that there's nearly $2 billion spent between 2017 and 2018 on IT contracts, which has gone to 3 firms, IBM, Bell Canada, and Microsoft Canada. So how does over-reliance by the current government for these large tech firms harm small and medium-sized Canadian startups?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. No one gets fired for selling or buying from IBM, right? So taking a chance on a small company can be a risk, and I appreciate that. What we're asking for is we still want to compete. We're happy to compete, but we have to be part of the competition. And that can be a challenge for us because IBM has teams of people whose job it is to find these procurement opportunities. And we're small and lean, and we're just trying to find the time to make sure we find about the right opportunity when that window is open so we can compete. And it's massively challenging for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fortier, please, for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to all of you for being here today. It's a pleasure to see you, Ms. Vachon, Ms. Codcy. We were able to already meet a couple of times. Hello, Ms. Bernier. Happy to meet you. I think that this was a much-needed study in the sense that we can want to see how we can encourage women to participate in international trade, but also we need to look at what already exists, what does work, what doesn't work. Where do you think we should look for new initiatives to meet the needs of women entrepreneurs and women on the ground that want to get into international trade? That's what I would like to get into. I think that in your opening statements, you've suggested some initiatives, some recommendations, but I'd like to dig deeper. So starting with Ms. Vachon, then Ms. Codcy, and if we still have time, followed by Ms. Bernier, I'd like to look at, what already exists and what we should look into to add to this in the future.
Moi, je pense pas qu'on a besoin de réinventer d'autres initiatives parce que ce qui a été mis en route.
I don't think that we need new initiatives because things have already been established in the last 5 years that have been very valuable. We've been talking about funding, but I think there's a lack of balance between investing in funding and investing in supporting companies, for example. I find that SMEs are often the government's blind spot. There's a lot of support for large firms. I don't know if they need that much. Maybe they do. But the small companies are really our future. Those are the big companies of the future. So sometimes we think they're too small. We're looking at numbers. But what I would like to see is if you, through our programs, could help us support small companies so that they can become tomorrow's large firms. I think it was about $18 billion that was injected into women entrepreneurs. But we have to remember that these women with small companies often find themselves at a stalemate when they can't get a contract. So it's harder to get funding. It's harder to move up. And I would say if we're talking about the government, we need to invest a little bit more to help women be able to access and enter into new markets so that they can go to the bank already with a contract and things will be a lot easier for them. Thank you.
Madame Coetzee,
Thank you, Ms. Cotier. A brief answer so that hopefully Ms. Bernier can add something before we're out of our 6 minutes. Ms. Cotier?
sourdine.
I think you're on mute still.
Mute. Voilà, désolé.
Sorry. I think another element that we didn't get into yet, but that I think is very important, is the intersectionality. We're talking about all women. Oftentimes, we're really in it's sort of a war. You have to show the money. If you want to move up, if you want financing, you need to show the numbers. There are a lot of men in venture capital. It's majoritarily men who are making decisions in this field. And when men are giving out money, they're focused on growth. So sometimes women aren't necessarily good at giving the best pitch, at pitching their projects, but we want to support women to navigate this and take into account the fact that often it is white men who are making these decisions. And when they see women, often women in male-dominant fields, they hesitate to invest in them, especially when it's seen as a higher risk investment. And this shows the extent to which women are actually able to succeed as well, if not better than men, given these difficult circumstances. And so we want to train people and help diversify these teams that are making funding decisions and investment decisions, rather. And we don't want this to simply be something like, or we can look into AI. The goal here is that the decisions being made are not biased. So we want women to have the courage to jump into this. Thank you, Ms. Bernier.
The only thing I would add, and I completely agree with Ms. Cotsy's statement there, is that that confidence she spoke of, we often get accused when we're speaking with American customers, American funders, that we're too Canadian. And so you can imagine Canadian women are even a step beyond that in being not confident, too humble. And I think that confidence comes ultimately from customers. It doesn't come from grants. It doesn't come from programs. It doesn't come from a bank loan. It comes from customers. So we have to think of the path that we can help those companies and those entrepreneurs get to revenue generated from customers as quickly as possible, because I believe that's truly where that confidence comes from.
Okay, thank you very much. Jean, to Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today and for your opening statements. My question will go back to international trade. In the future, there will be a review of CUSMA, the Canada-Mexico-U.S. agreement. And so different countries will have different requests. So I'd like to know, do you think there are any modifications to the agreement that could be made to highlight the needs of women entrepreneurs who are exporters or who would like to become exporters? What are your suggestions for those representatives who will be around the table negotiating? I'm assuming, Ms. Bernier, you have something to add, and then our two other witnesses could add to that afterwards.
Not being that familiar with the intricacies of that agreement, we actually haven't had too many challenges selling into the U.S. And I think what's again, interesting, and I know I keep coming back to domestic procurement, but you may have noticed when I listed that our clients included NATO, the UK Ministry of Defence, and the US State Department, I did not list a Canadian government entity on that list because we have not been able to do business. We struggle more to do business in Canada than with customers in the US and Mexico. So I would have to do more research to have more specific commentary on that. Thank you.
Des difficultés avec d'autres pays aussi.
Are there difficulties with other countries? Are there regulatory systems that play a role here? Like, are there specific countries that you've struggled with? You said there's been difficulties in Canada. You said you've had a better time with the U.S. Are there any other examples that you'd like to note that would be useful for the committee to focus on?
Thank you. I think it hasn't been a struggle from a regulatory perspective. More support for entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs specifically, and just understanding how to do business in different countries, especially where you may not speak the language or be as familiar with the culture. So, doing business with NATO in Brussels, we had a learning curve to figure out, what is normal for them. We have a large customer in Brazil. So helping me, who's having those conversations with their procurement team and reviewing contracts, knowing what's normal, how I need to maybe address them or deal with certain challenges that I would deal differently with a Canadian customer or a U.S. customer. That would be really helpful and potentially something that trade commissioners could help out with in the future.
Madame Vachon.
Ms. Vachon, do you have something to add?
Dans ces accords-là, c'est que on est...
In these agreements, we're not always necessarily fully included. We are a part of the discussion, but we have a certain responsibility in procurement, and I think that what we often see is that it's in favor of large firms. So someone was saying this earlier. I think it's important that women be well informed and that we support them in entering these markets. They need to be included in this whole process. We have a role to play in delivering these services to make sure that they're able to move forward. Does this require more briefing sessions, more training on new markets, on foreign markets? Do we need to enhance existing programs? Yes, and all of this should be in function with their specific skills. Oftentimes, we're looking to level 2 instead of direct suppliers. So sometimes we're not included directly. And so sometimes we're taking into account later on. So are you saying that we need to do more, but at the same time, we need to take into account everyone's different skill set? How do we make this accessible to everyone? Well, we need to raise awareness with big firms. So, for example, if we want to do business with BMW, instead of selling to BMW, we're going to organize missions or projects to work with BMW suppliers. So we want to make sure that there is a path that allows us to take advantage of to help these companies expand. Anything else to add for our third witness?
Écoutez, moi, j'ai pas grand-chose à rajouter puisque mon
I don't have much to add because I'm focused on exporting. So I think that the other witnesses covered what was important here. Thank you. I do have 30 seconds left, but I will add to this on the next round.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you all for being here before us today. I'm going to kind of follow up with the questions that Monsieur Savard-Tremblay had with regards to international trade. We have, over the last decade, signed numerous free trade agreements with other countries and groups of countries, with the European Union, with the Pacific partnerships, with the United States and Mexico, et cetera, and these sort of recent modern treaties, if you will, all seem to have some language. Some of them actually have specific chapters on women in trade, supporting women in trade. And I'm getting the sense that maybe the witnesses here today may not have a direct link with those issues. But just if you could comment, perhaps I'll just put it this way, that if you were advising the government on what to put into a free trade agreement with a country or a group of countries, for instance, the new CUSMA, what would you put in there to really support enterprises led by women? And I think I'll start with Ms. Codsey, because you were just finishing off there. I don't know if putting it that way gives you anything more to add.
Well, yes. What I want to say is that in any sort of agreement, I'm one who's always been in favor of legislation that actually helps women get to their goals. Because if we look at, for instance, quotas of women on boards, and it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but there's a parallel. Meaning, like in France, they have La Loi Copé-Zimmermann that requires 40% of women on boards. It worked. Here in Canada, we've got half of that. So when you legislate, you find the women. You don't legislate, you find excuses. So anything that we are working on with another government, and we've got an agreement, and if we say that we expect in that agreement that women be given a certain portion, then I think that's going to happen, because there will be efforts made on both sides of the border to make sure that the women are found, that the women are supported, that the women are propelled. And I think we've got to take into account the fact that it's just like in politics. Everybody says if you want a woman to run for politics, you have to ask her on average 8 times before she actually goes. So even for women entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. They'll go into entrepreneurship much later than men do. They'll miss out on a lot of grants that are supposedly for young entrepreneurs because they wait till their kids are older to start, etc. So I think there are ways to be very deliberate in terms of getting the women to decide that this is what they want to do, and in terms of making sure that whether it's a government, whether it's an organization, a company who wants these services, that they're making sure that they're giving a fair chance, taking into account the fact that the women are often less good at pitching, less good at networking, less self-confident, they get less funding. So if you actually embed that in an agreement, call it quotas if you want, but I think it's really worthwhile, and Europe has shown us how it actually works. Hope this helps.
It's very helpful. It actually just, crystallize things in my mind. We have chapters on the environment, for instance, on labor, where we want to ensure that the countries we're trading with, we're on an equal footing with labor practices, with environmental regulations. And the example you gave, I think, is a concrete example of where we could up the game here to make sure that we're on the same level with countries such as France. So, that was interesting. How much? A minute and a half. I will turn to Ms. Bernier then and ask if you have anything to add, and if not, I have another question. But
just quickly, I think it's important to note that, as a private business, we also can explore different structures, right? So, for example, we have a U.S. subsidiary as well as a European subsidiary. So those agreements have to take into account that we can, and I think we should be incentivized to keep business flowing through our Canadian entity and not be forced to run it through one of our subsidiaries.
Okay, but in terms of these chapters on gender rights and promoting equal opportunity, those chapters have not affected your business in any way, haven't helped? Okay.
Not, and maybe they have, and that's why they're not top of mind for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll leave it there for now. I'll come back in the next round.
Mr. Martel for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here with us today. My first question is for Ms. Vachon. I'd like to hear about your perspective on government and private initiatives, those that we already have to support women in entrepreneurship.
Je trouve sincèrement.
To be honest, I think that a lot of people want to all go in the same direction. For example, the Government of Canada works in a lot of sectors. 80% of women are in the service industry. And so for us, diversifying suppliers allows us to work with all women from all sectors, in manufacturing to the service industry. Oftentimes, we create initiatives that are so specific that they only support a small group of women. Rather, we should try to open ourselves up to initiatives that are a lot broader to support a larger number of women. Say we invest $500,000 in a given company. Maybe that should have been distributed more widely. So I don't think that these are being well directed, and that should be worked on. There are not many women in tech, for example. So we're working with a lot of women in the service industry, and we're finding that the government should be investing a lot in, the government is investing a lot in in schooling and trying to bring women into tech, but we don't have a lot of means to change women's career path. So we need more means to be able to further support them. When women entrepreneurs get startup funding, I often hear them tell me that once they're at the point of commercializing their company, there's no more funding. They feel that they're forgotten. What do you think about this? Yes, they seem to fall into a hole at that point. There's a lot of support for startups. We really help them to move up, but then once you're a larger firm, they imagine that everything works out for you. And Caroline said this earlier when we were talking about networking. A woman is working on a product that they love, and they're trying to get it out there, and then later on they face a lot of struggles. So we want to ensure that we're building their confidence, because a lot of it is a lack of confidence, as Caroline said. What's the most difficult about bringing them into the market? Or is that the most difficult element? Yes, it is the most difficult. I'd also like to ask you a question pertaining to challenges that women entrepreneurs face outside of large cities. Are there differences between women in big cities and those in more rural areas? Do they face greater challenges? Is it easier for women in cities? Well, the majority of large companies are in cities. So what we're looking to do is get closer to these environments. And oftentimes, as we said, women have a lot of responsibility at home, and they don't want to be away from home too much. But yes, this is a challenge. What role does Réseau des Femmes d'Affaires du Québec, or RFAC, play here? We really are working on the ground. So we have, for example, women who will go knock on the doors of businesses and ask them how much they're investing. We take them around the table. We ask them what they need. And so we're working with women directly in this way. So we had a 3-year mandate with the government of Quebec. We were working with $11 million, and what we found is that we need these women on the ground, knocking on doors, working to really make sure that we're taking this type of action to help them grow. Thank you.
10 seconds over. Mr. Wilson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. The government has created and funded several funding streams to help and support businesses, especially for women. And when businesses are thriving, then lives and the economy are generally better. To Ms. Coetzee, in your opinion, which government program has benefited you or your members the most? And is it helping with women-owned businesses accessing any international market? And if you can share with any measurable outcomes or stories with that.
Thank you for the question. I can't really answer that because, as I mentioned at the start of my testimony, I have an organization that works with corporations to elevate the women. So I can share my own experience as a woman entrepreneur. And what I can say is the difficulty I have in terms of finding resources and understanding where there is government-led funding, where there is support, where there is mentoring. Ruth was mentioning how, we can help women with their startup phase, and then we sort of, drop them there. And then how do they scale up? How do they continue on? Because it's a huge, massive waste of money if we put money into an entrepreneur who doesn't get the support to go to the next phases, and it just dies there. So what are we doing to actually ensure that there is support at every step of the way, and that we take into account holistically the life of a female entrepreneur, whether it's her personal life, whether it's how we can mentor her to be able to. So, I don't want to get back into all the details that I've shared earlier, but I can't really tell you which programs are most beneficial. I think that's maybe a question Ruth can answer better, or the other lady, Audrey, I believe.
Or maybe other, Ms. Bernier, if you'd like to add to that.
Thank you. Yes, we have taken advantage of any and every federal, provincial, local program along our journey. And as we've grown and our needs have changed, some of them have become more important. The few I would like to point out, SHRED has been excellent for us. We are an R&D company, and that has helped us immensely to be able to continue innovating and continue developing new intellectual property. The NRC IRAP program, we've also taken advantage of that. That has allowed us to focus on creating new jobs, new highly qualified personnel, and hire those folks into our company to do that R&D. More recently, as we've been focused on scaling, we've taken advantage of the Prairies Can programs through Western Economic Diversification that are zero interest repayable loans that have helped us incredibly with cash flow as we have focused our efforts away from just R&D and more towards go-to-market and export. And those have helped us make some of those significant investments up front. And this is a challenge I think a lot of companies have as they're transitioning from research and development to commercialization is you have to spend a lot of money and you're not going to see the payoff for quarters or potentially years. So programs such as the Prairies Can loan programs have helped us immensely to be able to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. And do you believe the current financial initiatives are adequate for to meet the needs of women-owned businesses? And what kind of improvement would you recommend to the committee?
Yeah, I think they're adequate in that there is a big enough pot of money available. I think potentially some reassessment and refocusing on how do we specifically support women entrepreneurs. And again, to a point I've hopefully made several times here today, it has to focus on getting those organizations and companies to revenue as quickly as possible, because what we've seen, and I've seen it in our own ecosystem, is companies that end up reliant on government programs and grants and stay alive longer than they should, when the best thing for that company and ultimately for our economy is for those companies to wind down and those entrepreneurs to take those lessons learned and move on to the next thing as quickly as possible.
And okay, do you agree that Canada is one of the leading country in supporting women entrepreneurship?
I don't know if I have the information to say yes or no, unfortunately.
Okay, and if any other wants to answer these questions online, Ms. Coetzee or Ms. Vachon?
Ms. Vachon.
Moi, je pourrais répondre, oui.
Yes, I could give an answer. The women entrepreneurship strategy has been very important in the last 5 years because it's allowed us to do a lot of studies and to see where we should be focusing our work. It's been very useful for us, and it's allowed us to create this platform for networking. It's very difficult for women to find contracts, and so our robot calls for a tender in different sectors for women who are on the platform. That's an important role. And then something that's often underestimated is the role that women play amongst each other. They are able to identify other women they can work with and to offer each other contracts. Studies have shown that these entrepreneurs are, when you scale up, you need different supports, and these women are able to offer each other contracts to ensure the survival of their businesses and to keep the companies profitable. So it really is peer-to-peer support.
I'm sorry, if you can maybe use those comments and respond to another member's question, but I don't want to take away from the other members. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Oui, je vais débuter avec Madame Vachon.
Yes, I'll start with Ms. Vachon. I don't know if we'll have the time to get answers from our other witnesses as well. I know you are with Femmes d'Affaires du Québec. Do you feel that there are specific challenges for women entrepreneurs in Quebec? I know that there are differences in Quebec. There's the Caisse de dépôt and different tools that create a Quebec-specific model that we've had since the 60s. So I'd like to know if there is a difference in the programs between the federal level and the Quebec-specific programs and compared to other provinces. What's the difference between all this? Well, in Quebec, I would say we're in a bit of a blind spot because Quebec Investment, or Investissement Québec, has a big team. But I think that we could improve things with them in terms of KPI. So I don't want to brag, but I would say that, no problem. I have no issues with you bragging about Quebec. Well, in Quebec, we do have this unique expertise, and the government of Canada has asked us to spread this throughout the country because we're talking about millions of dollars in revenue that's going into women's pockets. So I would say that we do have an advantage. I would say that we've made a lot of progress in recent years that would allow us to say that we have some amazing women in entrepreneurship in Quebec. So to summarize this, I would say in terms of women entrepreneurs, we're at the same caliber as the rest of Canada, but in terms of programs, we're actually ahead of the curve, and we're now an example and an inspiration for the rest of Canada. So I would not say that we're necessarily being copied, but would you say that we truly are an inspiration here in Quebec? Yes, so we have 3 years of experience in this. We have a solid foundation with our platform in terms of training and in companies, training women entrepreneurs. This takes time. So we've been increasing women's capacity. This is going well. Now, I would say that 3 years is rather short when you want to change an entire society's vision on things. And after 3 years, I don't think the network would be able to run these initiatives without support.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you. I'm going to turn back to Ms. Bernier. And you mentioned a couple of things together. You mentioned how it would be very helpful to have more government procurement to help businesses. You mentioned the problem of confidence that you need from customers. And it seemed that procurement would not only bring the cash flow that you need to move from that research and development phase into full production, but it would also provide that confidence because people could look at your track record with your government procurement contracts and say, this is a company that is doing well, it's doing what we want. I'm just wondering if you could sort of elaborate on that and maybe touch base with, you mentioned you haven't had much, if any, government procurement from Canada. Maybe if you can try to explain why that is, where the problems are, and if you can imagine a government program that would try to fix that, what would that look like?
Yes, thank you. In the earlier days, when our technology was a little more experimental, we did attempt to participate in the Build in Canada Innovation Program, which has since been rejigged into a program called Innovative Solutions. And I'm not familiar with the new program and how they might have changed it, but our experience with the Build in Canada program, which was meant to be a way to facilitate early stage technology, but technology that is ready to be used, bringing that in to be used in government's programs, was one of the worst experiences in my time building this company. It was slow, it was bureaucratic, we couldn't get straight answers from anyone on what steps were next, and eventually we just gave up. So I would hope that the replacement for that program, Innovative Solutions, is a lot more of a straightforward and smooth process. I want to be really clear, we're not expecting our government to just give us business because we're Canadian companies, but we need to be at the table to compete. And in our case, we're competing with some massive, highly capitalized US-based competitors that are winning contracts with the Canadian government, and we can't even get in the room. We can't find our way in to have that conversation, show our product. So it's really difficult to get in the door, and we're just asking to be let in the door and show off that we could potentially solve this problem that currently U.S.-based competitors are solving right now.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry you're over, but I wanted to make sure Ms. Burnley had a chance to complete her sentence. Mr. Genero for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's great to welcome a fellow Edmontonian to the committee. I think we should have a motion, Madam Chair, that we always have an Edmontonian at this committee. I think it'd be great. But thank you for your testimony here today. I think you raised a lot of red flags, Ms. Bernier, about you can do business with NATO, do business with UK State Department, Uber, Brazil, you mentioned, but yet it's really challenging to do business here in Canada. Some of questions were scooped from Mr. Cannings, but I think if you could elaborate on what that means for not just your company, but what that means for other Canadian companies that are looking to do business with the Canadian government, provincial government, municipal governments.
Yes, thank you. I think, and again, I'm probably hitting this point again and again, but it's because I think it is so crucial. If Canadian companies cannot find those initial opportunities at home, we just are going to have such a harder time exporting because we are then trying to do business internationally. We don't have networks. We can't get the introductions. So we have to fight to get our way in. And we've done that through a lot of hard work and grit and determination. But looking back, thinking about, and for example, when we go to RFP to try to win these contracts with NATO or the UK Ministry of Defence, often one of the questions is, well, who are you already doing business with? What governments do you already have a contract with? They want to see those reference customers. They want to see that social proof. That counts for a lot in those RFPs. And if we were able to first be able to do business provincially or federally, that would just clear that path so much for us. And it's easy to say that in hindsight, who knows? But I think it's just something that this committee should consider. I know we're talking about export, but being able to export when you already have some reference customers, I believe would be much easier.
And you did reference the three funding programs, IRAP, NRCan, and Prairies Can. None of those are to my colleague's question on women entrepreneurs. None of those are specific to women entrepreneurs. I just want to make sure that through the analysts that we recognize that when asked if what programs are working, those three were referenced and not the women entrepreneurship programs. But you also talked about looking to venture capital in the United States and what that means if you were to go and get venture capital there versus venture capital here. I get the impression that would be it's a negative, obviously, for nationalism and patriotism and whatnot. But is it a negative for you doing business here in Canada? Then is that what you? Some of your testimony?
I think it removes a lot of the incentives for us to maintain operations and continue hiring people in Canada. We would lose access to a lot of the programs that I mentioned, which is fair if we make that choice to take investment from investors outside Canada and lose our CCPC status. That's a choice that we'll have to make. But it does significantly reduce incentive for us only to continue building our company here. But what really concerns me, and I think should concern this committee, is someday if we have a liquidity event, we sell our company, everyone makes a little bit of money, where are they then going to start their next businesses, knowing what they know and the experience that they would have went through, especially if we lose our CCPC status?
I think I have about a minute and a bit left, yeah. So just your last point that you brought up about the trade commissioners and what that means when you go abroad. I personally never had any interaction with any trade commissioners. I guess just if you could elaborate on how that could be approved, how you see it as perhaps not working right now.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience, and perhaps that's because some of the early experiences weren't particularly helpful. I did find that it was a lot of trade commissioners pointing us in a lot of directions. Oh, you should do business with them over there. Can you make an introduction? No. So ultimately, I think when we're looking to do business abroad, and this is a big ask, I recognize that, we need connections in. We need introductions. Just saying, oh, you should be doing business with ExxonMobil. Yeah, I figure that. Can you make me an introduction? That's where things could be really, really helpful, especially from trade commissioners, if possible.
14 seconds. Thank you very much. Mr. Sheehan for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our presenters for your fantastic testimony, and thank you to my friend here on the left for putting forward this very important study. One that's absolutely critical. Chair, through you to our presenters, I'm going to ask Carolyn a question. You'd mentioned that it's only 11%, I think you said, women are involved in trade-related businesses. And, you know, I think that's disappointing, to say the least, when we hear 11%. But within that 11%, first of all, I wanted to ask when that study was done. And I have a couple of questions around that. You know, we've seen the $10 a day daycare or the reduced daycare fees have increased the participant rate of women in the workforce in Canada significantly to record numbers now, as high as it's ever been. Are there any stats, is there any numbers to indicate if there's been any movement recently, because it is a fairly recent announcement, in increasing the participation of women in entrepreneurship and in particular in trade?
Look, I don't know when that stats was, when that study was, but I think it's quite recent. These numbers are indeed alarming, but I mean, if I do a parallel with what's happening in the corporate world, I mean, if you look at the FP 500, the 500 largest companies in Canada, there is about 6 or 7% of female CEOs. I don't think we really measure the magnitude of the gender gap in Canada today, everywhere, in every sector, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's in corporate Canada, in big organizations. So that is the reality that we are facing. And women, whether they are in large corporations or whether they are entrepreneurs, are facing the same obstacles. It's always the same things. It's a lack of there are things that pertain to the women, whether entrepreneurs or in corporate Canada, that pertain to the women. And the work that we do is to provide them with all the tools so that they can up their game, so that they can come out of their comfort zone, so that they can overcome their fears, they can pitch, they can network, they can be out there. We look at the government, and earlier we had a conversation between Ruth and one of the gentlemen about, tooting the horn of Quebec. I think we definitely are a leading province in many things that are instrumental for gender equality here in Quebec. I talked about the importance of legislation and how in France it allowed to go from 12% of women on boards to 42% of women on boards, because it is just not accepted by government. There are sanctions. The board members can lose their les jetons de participation. If the board doesn't comply. There are things that can be done, and Quebec is the only province in Canada that has la loi de gouvernance des sociétés d'État, which is, I don't know, I hope there's translation here on la loi de gouvernance des sociétés d'État, and
the act pertaining to the company's governance.
Crown corporations, les sociétés d'État, have parity. There's 51% of women on these boards. So there's definitely things that are being done in Quebec. And I think the government's responsibility is huge, because it works. When Quebec has done things like 25 years ago, 25 years before the federal government adopted a fair pay, the equal pay, comment on appelle ça, la loi d'équité salariale.
Pay Equity Act.
Government to implement this, but we've had this in Quebec forever. We've got the $5 daycare. We had the $5 daycares. That's under Pauline Marois, and every government, whether it's Parti Québécois, la CAQ, the Liberal Party, they've always implemented very gender things that are very conducive for women's participation in the economy. And it's not just to do the equitable thing. It's because there is so much des retombées, there is so much payback for the economy. And Chrystia Freeland, when she did her budget, it was a feminist budget. Why? Because there is ample demonstration that when we allow women to fully participate in the economy, it's actually beneficial to all of us, not just to the women, to our society as a whole. And one last thing that we're the only province that does, that's when women get married in Quebec, you keep your own last name, which is also a feminist approach to it that you don't have anywhere in the country. So, I mean, I'm from Lebanon. And so living in Quebec is a dream for someone who's looking for equity. There's a lot that can be done, that should be done to support further female entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And my wife kept her name too. She's a Bradford.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it's going to be all me too. Okay. We have about 20 minutes left before we deal with the other business. So I'm going to suggest we get partway through the third round, right? So we'll go to Mr. Williams for 5 minutes. So everybody will get a few more minutes in this round, okay?
Thank you, and thank you to all the witnesses. This is amazing testimony so far. Ms. Bernier, you had some great recommendations in the start. You talked about capital programs for growth, talking about revenue, which is fantastic. We need to be growing companies in Canada. Something that we look at to free up access to capital and financial services is open banking. And in Canada, we've been waiting 6 years, almost 7 years, for open banking legislation. Do you see that as beneficial to entrepreneurs, to women entrepreneurs in Canada, to have this legislation enacted as soon as possible? And I'd also like you to comment on just access to capital. VC funding in the U.S. is much greater than ours, so you're seeing the results of that. We only have $6 billion a year in Canada. The U.S. has $200 billion. So it's quite a stark contrast. That might be why you're seeing more interest. But what can we do? Is open banking, should it be coming, financial access, and then looking at VC as a whole? What recommendations can you make?
Thank you. I guess without getting into too much detail, we have experienced a lot of challenges with the banking options available to us in Canada. I find personally that there are better, more flexible, more transparent options to me available personally. than there are for our corporate banking needs. And that has been a huge challenge for us. Can you tell me a little bit more about that legislation, perhaps? I could try and comment specifically.
So open banking, the government, the Liberal government's promised to bring forth legislation. They keep promising, and we haven't seen it. So in terms of having that access to open banking, which just allows more access from individuals and businesses to different financial services and banks as a whole, do you see that beneficial not only to your business, but to women entrepreneurs as a whole, to have more access to banks in general and financial services?
Without having read the legislation, based on what you're telling me, I would agree with that, yes.
And for VCs, of course, same thing. So venture capital, obviously, you know, venture capital is different. It's a risk by individuals who put their own funds in, but it's a stark contrast. Is there any comments you have on venture capital?
Yeah, and I guess the one other comment I would make on banking is, you know, a year or two ago, what we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, we want to avoid situations like that. So keeping that in mind with any legislation. But, you know, when we went through our Series A round of funding, we talked to most major venture capital firms in Canada. And some were excited and wanted to participate and ultimately did, and some weren't. So when we go to raise our next round of funding, we already have kind of covered that pool, and there just isn't a large enough pool of venture capital available for the kind of funding that companies like ours that are interested in high growth, getting to be massive, getting to be, you know, 1 of 10 are after. And so that will be a challenge for us in the future.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chair, I'm going to go to Mr. Baldinelli for my last 2 minutes.
To the witnesses, I'm just going to follow up with Ms. Bernier. You know, the Canadian or the Council of Canadian Innovators, they recently an Every Generation petition, and that petition talked about the government cannot tax your way to prosperity, and that the Liberal government's federal budget will stifle innovation and growth. I mean, in terms of Samdesk, I mean, can you elaborate on, you know, which taxes are stifling growth potential?
Well, potentially the changes to the capital gains taxes will.
Yeah, considering, you know, you don't have that in the United States, and that notion of venture capital.
Yep, and I know of businesses who have moved their operations to Austin, Texas, for example, for that reason, just because of the more favorable taxes.
Wow. One last question, and you talked about it in your presentation earlier on, I mean, about companies such as yourselves, Samdesk, struggle to do business with Canada, and there are more opportunities in the United States and European Union and Mexico. You talked about NATO, for example. Now, you, in one of your recommendations, you were talking about that leverage domestic procurement opportunities. I mean, and that will talk to your earlier point is also about scaling operations. If you can get access to those opportunities. Now, what is the area?
20 seconds remaining, so we can just kind of make it
Where
tight.
are those areas that we could assist to open up those opportunities or make you more aware of those opportunities?
I think some of the systems are just antiquated in terms of how we can find out about these opportunities without having to check a website once a week. A lot of the other systems we experience have a little bit more of an automated way to let you know about opportunities that might be of interest to you. And that would be very helpful to look at something like that here.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fortier, please.
Merci beaucoup encore une fois. Merci à vous.
Thank you once again. Thank you for being here today. I think it's very important to see how we can do better because we're already doing a lot, but there is more to be done. Some of you were talking about incentives. So I would like to hear any more incentive suggestions that you might have. Also, are there any best practices or a model that exists outside of Canada that we should adopt here? Ms. Gauthier, I know you were talking about France, but maybe there's something in the U.S. I know, Ms. Bernier, you had been talking about the fact that they have programs in the U.S. that offer support, that offer incentives. So if all three of you could answer that, please. Yes, thank you. I think this is my favorite question yet. In terms of public markets, it's very difficult for entrepreneurs because many of them have small businesses. On the private sector, the American government has fiscal incentives for companies. So they have to buy 5% from the suggested suppliers. And then there is a fiscal incentive for this. In Canada, we seem to shy away from this fiscal approach. But it allows women, it allows companies to have a larger opening to the market. Now, we know that American companies have a quota to meet. So if you take Costco, for example, that buys from us, I know where my money is going. And so each time that they work with a Canadian company, I know that I'm supporting their quota in the U.S., which is very advantageous. So we're focused on companies that have these programs that make a difference. And our women are not necessarily required to go export now, because oftentimes they'll go to the U.S. to get their order. But there are subsidiaries here in Canada. So they don't necessarily have to export. They can scale up while going to pick up their orders in the U.S. So I think that this is a great program, and we're so close to being able to say that here in Canada, we're able to directly contribute through a fiscal incentive in a way that will help women in entrepreneurship and large companies. Ms. Cotier, do you have another incentive to share with us? I just wanted to say very briefly that Canada is well known for its high tax burden that's higher than in many other countries. And I think intuitively, we all know that this slows things down, increases the burden on entrepreneurs. And I think that Ruth said something similar to what I think, that she's looking to places where there is this quota and where they're saying, you know, we need women to meet certain criteria. And so this really reinforces the fact that we need a structure behind this. I don't know, this could maybe come from the federal government. Ruth may know better than myself in pertaining to her requirements for her suppliers, the number of women that she's working with. I'm imagining that you do have requirements for your suppliers in terms of the number of women in there. If they have this equality certification. So the goal is that we're ensuring that women are participating more through this type of incentive. Well, I think that the federal government should be the example here, should be the first one to say, we are going to give our business, at least a certain part of it, to women. There should be a quota for women-led business. And these should be companies that are allowing women to contribute to all levels of the organization. This is the type of incentive that will allow companies to say, okay, if we're going to get business from the federal government, we need to show that we're doing things correctly, that we're working with women. And this is whether we're talking about small companies or large firms that have tens of thousands of subsidiaries. They need to show that each year they're establishing the policies, the company culture that is creating that gender parity. And I think that Ruth has something to add to this, but that's all I wanted to say. I unfortunately don't have any more time, but Ms. Bernier, if you have just one example to share, that would be appreciated.
Okay, just one quick point, and I think this is a really important one. If we are going to explore introducing incentives and quotas, we have to consider our definition of a women-owned business, because as a venture capital-based business, no one owns over 50% of our business. We have many, many shareholders, so if that's going to be our definition, that's going to automatically preclude a lot of women-ran businesses.
Great advice. Thank you. Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5.
Oui, alors Madame Vachon.
Yes, so Ms. Vachon, we know that most companies that are owned by women and that export are usually smaller companies compared to those owned by men. So we have some questions we could ask on the reasons behind this. But then in the service sector, especially in retail, we see that there are more women. Can you speak more to this? I think that this is a sort of natural law that's been governing this for years. But in relation to the last question, when we look at taxes, if we flip the process, we would be putting this into the hands of large companies that then would be looking for companies led by women to insert them into their supply chain. So I know it's difficult for the government to change the system, but if there was a small incentive for large firms, they would be the ones that would create change in this system. So we'd be dealing with the problem, all the while making things easier for you. Ms. Bernier, you're in a tech company, an AI company. Is this a field in which women really stand out? And also, I'd like to know how is this broken down inside the firm? What roles are women holding here? Are they doing administration? Are they doing design? How is this set out between men and women in the company?
Thank you for that question. We have women in technical roles in our company, and that is something that we strive when hiring for technical roles, that we bring in as many female candidates as we can during the interview process. We still want to hire on merit, of course. What we're finding is that because Edmonton in particular has an excellent university, we have the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute. We're finding a lot of women are coming up through that system and being able to join us in software development, machine learning, artificial intelligence roles. They tend to be early career. And what I'm really excited for is in the future, are they going to be that next wave of entrepreneurs that are going to be starting their own technology-based businesses because of the training and experiences they had through working with a startup like Samdesk?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry you're over. Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes, and will be our last member questioning.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to continue with Ms. Bernier again, just to follow up on my questions earlier about government procurement and that process. You indicated that you were having trouble kind of getting in the door for any government procurement in Canada, and yet you did have work with NATO, with big firms and agencies outside Canada. Does that not give the government of Canada or other agencies here the confidence to employ you? It's kind of the opposite to what we would normally think. And, this isn't an issue that specifically touches on international trade and women entrepreneurship, but it just is one more thing that women-run companies have to deal with. So I just wondered if you could just provide some background on your experiences and why you think the government is failing you here.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and we do have some ongoing conversations with Canadian government agencies around potentially using our product. We are generally selling into military and intelligence, and so it also just becomes a question of scale. NATO, UK Ministry of Defense, US military are just on a bigger scale. So conversations here tend to be slower, they tend to be smaller scale. We're spending a lot of time waiting right now. Things just seem to be slow moving here. So what I'm hoping is that as Canadian defense and military spending increases over the next 10 years, we might see more opportunities here.
Okay. One more follow-up question. I mean, you seem to indicate that the federal government was interested in talking to big companies from outside Canada, but not to your company. I don't know. To me, it's a bit of a conundrum.
It's an awareness issue. We're less than 100 people, right? And our competitors are 1,000. They have big budgets to spend on marketing. They have lobbyists. They're working with agencies. So, again, that's why we're just asking for support and initiative from the government to just help us get into those conversations, because we don't necessarily have the means that our competitors do to force our way in.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
much. Thank you to our witnesses. It is going to be a very exciting study that we're doing, and your information this morning was invaluable. So thank you very much. Minutes while our witnesses disconnect or are able to leave the room.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
In English and in French, the motion submitted by Monsieur Savard Tremblay last week, so that we know exactly and clearly what we are currently dealing with. Before we open that up for discussion, I need to read you the following procedural information to help the committee with as we move forward. Before moving to the consideration of the motion on the reception of documents from CBSA, I need to take a minute to go over what has already been provided to date. So as you would have seen, CBSA has provided an additional update this morning on the documents. I assume everybody has seen the letter from CBSA that came in this morning. Thus far, they have provided the committee with 5 documents made up of 16 appendices, totaling 290 pages. This does not include documents received on October the 1st or October the 7th. As they noted in the updates, the remaining documents are not tied up with the department, but with translation. In total, there are over 30,000 pages to be translated, which is a lot of work being undertaken by apparently a limited number of people. I have also suggested to the clerk, when he finds the opportunity, to invite translation, the manager of the translation services, to the committee. I think it would be helpful if the committee got a better handle on just how many people work in that department and so on and so forth. So I think that might be helpful. If that's okay with the committee, at a later date, we'll have the manager come in for a few minutes. Now, they have also provided an update to when documents will be ready. So later today, if not already, CBSA would have provided the first package of documents responsive to Part A of the committee's March 19th motion, and providing all outstanding documents responsive to the committee's March 21st motion. That you should have all received that already or will be receiving it today. So the next that we would be looking for is a disclosure package responsive to one of the 2 remaining March 19th written undertakings in the next week. A series of disclosure packages as translation is complete, responsive to Part A of the committee's March 19th motion, to be provided as quickly as possible. Second, disclosure packages responsive to Parts B and C of the committee's March 19th motion, to be provided as quickly as possible, and a disclosure package responsive to the final outstanding March 19th written undertaking, again to be provided as quickly as possible. CBSA has also reiterated that they can prioritize any documents remaining that the committee would like them to. So at the end of last Wednesday's meeting, Mr. Savard Tremblay presented a motion that, having now had a chance to look at it more closely, would qualify as a question of privilege. Namely, he's alleging that the committee's privileges have been breached through CBSA delay in providing the requested documents under the requested timelines. The power to send for papers and records is among the powers of House committees. So I would agree that this relates to parliamentary privilege and would agree that members are free to discuss that matter. That said, I would like to draw the members' attention to page 986 of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, third edition, on the matter of refusals to comply with an order for papers and records, which states, in cases where the author of the authority responsible for a record refuses to comply with an order issued by a committee to produce documents, the committee essentially has three options. The first is to accept the reasons and conditions put forward to justify the refusal. The committee members then concede that they will not have access to the record or accept the record with passages deleted. The second option is to seek an acceptable compromise with the author or the authority responsible for access to the record. The third option is to reject the reasons for denying access to the record and uphold the order to produce the entire record. Well, this is not a one-on-one comparison, as CBSA is not refusing to produce the documents. I think it is relevant to the matter at hand. It is well within the committee's rights to report to the House if it decides that it is the best course of action in this instance. However, while the documents have yet to be produced, CBSA has been responsive when asked about them. Based on what we've heard, they have been working to cooperate with the committee's request, but translation is what's preventing them from providing the documents. As previously noted, there are over 30,000 pages currently being translated. They have also offered to prioritize translation of specific documents at the committee's request, an offer that we as yet have not taken advantage of. Therefore, I would seek the committee's direction on how you would like to proceed with this matter. I would like to think that we could find a compromise on this question, but I will leave it into the committee's hands. Now, on to the motion from Mr. Savard Tremblay. Okay.
J'avoue.
We'll give you a second there.
Oui. Il sait qu'il y en a qui sont plus longues et dures à avaler. Là. Mais donc, j'écoutais votre mot, puis regardez, je suis...
Like anything in politics, some things are a little harder to swallow. So I was looking at what you noted here. I have the same point to share here. We heard from them in March, and orally they told us that they could deliver everything. And this is a government organization. I would imagine that they should already have a French version at hand. But we voted on a motion, and it was clearly said that this could be provided. They said within 2 weeks at that time. That's what they said. That's not what I said. They told us that this was possible. Following this, they told us that they announced the report. I think this was in April. This should be implemented now. And in your update, you said that we were going to receive the last 2 documents brief in a short time, but we still don't have them now. They said, well, maybe 2 weeks was a little tight. We didn't evaluate things well. But even 6 months seems difficult, and yet we're looking at an experienced agency. So they make this commitment in front of everyone, and they don't seem to have any idea of how long it will take to produce these documents. So yes, we can ask them to prioritize things, but this doesn't change the fact that we need all the documents, and this claim that they made that was not factual leads me to want to stick to my motion.
Okay, I have Mr. Sidhu and then Mr. Cannings.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if committee members got the printout on your desks of the amendments. Sorry? No, we have enough for the opposition. Yeah.
That wasn't communicated to me.
Sorry. Apologies. He has it.
No, you have them running right now.
They're getting, yeah.
Yeah, they'll be here in a matter of a minute.
Sure, I can speak to it in the meantime. But I did give you enough copies for everybody.
Well,
there.
let's.
Yeah.
Can we get what we have distributed? And if necessary, we will wait a minute until the clerk gets the copies.
Yeah.
Okay, then you speak to it, Mr.
Yep.
Sidhu.
So I think most of my colleagues here have the document in front of them, and so I hear where my colleague is coming from. And I think it's important that we be respectful to both official languages, and if we wanted it in one language, they could be ready. But I think it's important for our two official languages to make sure that we have documents in both official languages. And as we heard, it's over 30,000 pages, and so. 30,000 pages would take probably someone close to 600 hours to review. And I think if Mr. Savard Tremblay wants to prioritize certain documents that he wants to look for, I think this amendment that I'll read into the record will help that, because I think it's about transparency, and I think the government wants to be very, very transparent in terms of what's presented. And as you can see in your original motion, and what the chair had said is documents have been provided to us by CBSA, but this is not what CBSA, this is what the Translation Bureau, the officials there, and they have to take their time to make sure that the documents are translated properly. And so I've got a few amendments here, and I'll read them to record. And so the first amendment is that the CBSA continues to provide the committee with the requested documents as they are translated, and has written to the committee on April 11th, the 19th, May 1st, October 1st, October 7th, requesting guidance from the committee. The CARM technical specifications alone exceed 30,000 pages, which need to be translated. And the last paragraph that I have is that the committee respond to the CBSA's request to indicate prioritization of the material to be translated and submitted to the committee. And we cross out the last section there in accordance with the orders adopted by the committee, as it has not received all the documents requested, that the committee consider its duty to refer these matters to the House, so that the latter may take the measures it deems appropriate with regard to parliamentary privilege, and that it mandate the chair to report to the House. I think this is an amendment to take Mr. Savard Tremblay's considerations very, very seriously. And I think when we prioritize the documents that Mr. Savard Tremblay wants, I think he'll see that he can go through the documents as he wishes. But again, reviewing over 30,000 pages, getting them translated, for someone that will read the average speed, it's going to take someone 600 hours to review 30,000 pages. So I'm not sure what we're getting at here, but I think in the spirit of transparency, I think this is a good remedy for Mr. Savard Tremblay's motion.
Okay, I have Mr. Cannings, then Mr. Savard Tremblay, Mr. Williams, Ms. Fortier, Mr. Cannings.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted some clarification here. I'm not an expert on, even having been here 9 years, I'm not an expert on definition of privilege and things like that. But I would assume, as I think you were outlining at the start in your comments, I think one of the main questions here is, do we think CBSA is delaying this on purpose? Gumming up the works because they don't want to answer. There's damning things that they're hiding. That's kind of, I think, the spin that some around this table might want to put on this. Or is it simply an issue of translation getting requests like this from not just this committee, but perhaps others, that is putting them behind schedule? So, is CBSA doing this on purpose, or were they just wildly optimistic when they promised us documents in 2 weeks or a month or whatever it was? And, you know, there was an assumption I just heard from Monsieur Savard-Tremblay that, you know, this is a government agency, so, you know, perhaps you would think that translation wouldn't be needed, that it was already done. So I'd like to hear, you know, what, you know, are these contracts with Deloitte that were only in English? You know, what are we looking at here? And I just have one question on the motion. It says in the third paragraph there, it says adopted a unanimous motion indicating that the CBSA had not received the requested documents. Is CBSA waiting for something? Are they waiting for those documents from translation, or what are they waiting for? So is it their problem or somebody else's delay? So I've got all these questions before I can make up my mind whether this, I think, is a question of privilege, you know, whether someone is actually thwarting our efforts to get at the answers, which I think are important. But I would and agree with Mr. Sidhu that, you know, I have one staff member here. We're not going to look at 30,000 pages of documents. And I'd be happy if other people around the table did, but that's their issue. So again, to me, it's a question of, do we believe that someone is deliberately trying to hide something here? And I haven't seen any evidence of that so far, you know, and there's sort of slow cooperation being shown here. You might want to read reluctance into that, I don't know, but I'd be happy to prioritize things so that we could read these on a timely basis as they came in and see what they said. But those are my comments.
Sir Savard-Tremblay.
Peut-être trois choses essentiellement.
Well, three things. Firstly, Mr. Sidhu is saying there's a translation issue. If we only wanted them in English, we would already have them. So, you know, in your update, you said there are many that are still waiting. We were supposed to have them 2 weeks later after they announced it. Some of them still haven't been submitted. It's not an issue of delays in translation. Some of them have not been submitted yet. Maybe they were a little ambitious with 2 weeks, but there's a difference between 2 weeks and 6 months, a big difference. Mr. Cannings was talking about their intention. I don't think we're here to evaluate their intentions. I don't think that there are any bad intentions here. We're here to evaluate the results. They made a commitment. They didn't deliver on that commitment. More than 6 months later, they still didn't deliver on the commitment. And so we're not able to do our work on the file. The question of prioritization. I agree with you. But in my mind, this is something else. This is a separate motion. Right now, what's the goal of my motion? The question is, did the agency deliver what they committed to delivering? It's not a question of what we're asking here now. Of course, we could provide a list of documents to prioritize. But the question here is the fact that they said in committee that they would deliver something within 2 weeks, and they did not do that. This motion is not on the documents that were requested, which documents were requested. It's to come back to the fact that they did not follow through.
Thank you. But if we correspondence that we have received from the department, it is that CBSA provided the documents is still in translation, and they're waiting for it to be returned.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I was not part of this committee in March, but looking through the facts now, and thank you for presenting what you have. I have a major concern just in documents on the response that we're waiting on translation. The Official Languages Act states that all documents for any government organization need to be in both official languages. Perhaps we can get a response from the government that if CBSA has documents, including CARM, that aren't in both official languages, why or why not? We have borders and we have systems that are in Quebec and the rest of Canada. Why would we then be waiting for translation? They should have been translated. That would be a bigger privilege to me, that if we didn't have these documents already in a government agency in both official languages, I think there's a bigger issue. So I know that there's some head shaking, so maybe I'll get a response as to what that issue was. Secondly, we've seen this multiple times. We're seeing it in different instances. If a committee asks for documents, it's been voted on, it's through the committee, and to your response in the beginning of this, it is the privilege of the committee that we get those in a timely manner. If the organization was here in March instead of a few weeks, it is the privilege of the committee to get those in a few weeks, or we should have had ample communication that said that we couldn't get them, that we weren't going to get them. 2 weeks is one thing. To have amendments on this maybe in 2 months would be a separate thing. 6 months later is unbelievable. And I think even if we don't have them or if they're not there, for this committee to pass this motion, the original motion, I think it would be prudent at least to say that this committee is serious in getting those documents to the House. I guess the question for procedure, Madam Chair, would be if we pass the original motion without the amendment and CBSA did get the documents before it came to the House, would that mean that motion would be deemed moot in front of the House? I guess that's a question I'd have, because if otherwise, I don't see anything wrong with pushing a little harder from this committee to say this has been a breach of privilege and we've had far too much time now. It almost would be that a limitation would be 6 months, and no matter what the committee, that 6 months is way too long to wait for documentation that was asked for, because soon enough we'll be in 2025 and that'll be a year, and that's much too long. But that's where we are. Hopefully I get some other answers, Madam Chair.
Can I just add that in the 25 years that I have been a member of Parliament, this is the first time that there's ever been an issue at committee with not being able to have received the documents as requested. I guess I go back to the issue. I think we need to invite the manager or the head of translation to come to committee, not to do a dressing down of translation, but to get a better understanding of what kind of workload they are currently. Is it very much different than previously? But I think we should know for the future just what's going on. If they're understaffed, then make an attempt to get the staffing required. But when the committee requests documentation, they need to see it in order to be able to do the work that's necessary. I have Ms. Fortier next.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Et,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a Francophone from Ontario, and I'm very proud to be. We worked a lot on the Official Languages Act. Unfortunately, we know that only public documents or documents that need to be tabled in Parliament need to be in both official languages. So internal contracts do not need to be translated into both official languages. It's only if it is required afterwards, as is the case here, that it needs to be translated. So we wouldn't have this problem if all internal documents within the government, whether they were public or not, were translated. Then yes, we wouldn't have this problem today, but unfortunately that is not the case. I wanted to reiterate the importance of having someone from the Translation Bureau and maybe someone from CBSA to share why we are in this situation today. This would help us, I think, to understand what happened, and that would help give us some direction. Secondly, I'd like to support my colleague's amendment, because this would help us to prioritize which documents we need to answer our questions. 37,000 pages is a lot, so my team will not be reading all of that. As Mr. Cannings said, we're not able to do this. But as Mr. Savard-Tremblay said, I think we could prioritize certain documents for translation that may be more important to us. So I support his motion, and I think that we'll be able to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I go to Mr. Savard-Tremblay, I have a document. I'm just going to mention I'm not going to mention what's been complete, but what is partially complete? They were asked on the March 19th to produce both the external review results and the internal review results of CARM Phase 2. That was 300 pages. It is partially complete. Another one was submit documents, ITPRs from Gartner and BDO on CARM readiness. That is 80 pages. It is partially complete. The independent third party was sent May 1st. Another one that's in progress is the 31,000 pages of material that has been collected in response. It is in translation and ongoing, and packages will be provided to the committee as they become available. Another one, the deliverable, establishing the link between the detailed functional, technical specifications of the system and the business needs. In progress, it was 2,100 pages. It is in translation. The material will be provided as it's ongoing. One other one is all documents demonstrating which business needs from the statement of work from the agency considers to be met by the current solution. That's in progress, approximately 200 pages. Again, it's in translation. So those were the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 relating to the March 19th request. And on the March 21st request was to produce in both official languages unredacted copies of the contingency and disaster recovery plans and the transition plan for importers who are not registered by May 13th. That is approximately 50 pages of material. The June 2023 commercial systems outage contingency plan was provided to the committee on April 11th. Some ongoing material to do with that request will be provided to the committee, and maybe that's one that's being provided today. So out of those 5 that are partially complete, I'm told from CBSA documents this morning that 2 of them will be provided to the committee today, which would mean there are 3 reports outstanding, one of them being the 30,000 pages referred to. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay.
Je veux réinsister que pour moi,
I want to come back to the question of prioritizing. This is a separate question. If there was a motion on the table on this, then that would be no problem. But that's not what we're discussing right now. There was a commitment that was not met. Madam Chair, you said that there had been breach of parliamentary privilege. You said it yourself. And now these are not my documents, my requested documents. This is the unanimous request of the committee. I think that's an important distinction to make. So I would suggest that we vote on the motion maybe immediately.
Mr. Sidhu?
Yeah, so to Mr. Canning's point in terms of getting some clarity from the Translation Bureau might be helpful for all of us here to hear from them. But maybe we can, so I move the amendment, maybe we can vote on the amendment and then we go to the main motion. I think that's how it works.
Well, you've moved an amendment, yes. The amendment will get voted on
So
first.
let's vote on the amendment then.
But Mr. Cannings did also indicate that he wanted some additional information, which would either come from the Translation Bureau or from CBSA. Does the committee want to try to get that additional information before going to a vote on this? This is an important matter. If we ask CBSA to come to our meeting on Wednesday and ask Translation if they would come on Monday prior to having a vote, possibly we would get a fuller picture of just what's the problem and where are we going with that. I throw that out as a suggestion, trying to find a way to move this along. Mr. Savard-Tremblay?
En fait, j'ai envie de vous dire oui, mais non.
I would like to say yes, but no. The debate on translation delays is very relevant. Yes, this raises some issues that are extremely important in the long term, not just for this committee, but for other committees as well. If we need to evaluate a new program and we need to wait so long, then that's an issue. So yes, we should dig into this question. And maybe this is a question that should be looked at a level above us by other committees as well, because this could be a generalized problem. But this being said, that's not what we're talking about right now. I think we're diluting the issue here by talking about translation issues. Even though it does deserve to be spoken of, it's something else.
Okay, I'm in the hands of the committee.
So maybe we can just, if that's not amendable to Mr. Savard Tremblay, maybe we just go to a vote on the amendments that I moved on the floor.
All right, so everyone knows the amendment that Mr. Sidhu has moved. Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Thank you. So we are voting on the amendment of Mr. Sidhu. Members voting, Mr. Sidhu.
I'm voting for my amendments.
It doesn't always go that way, you know.
Mr. Sheehan.
I will vote for his amendment.
Madame Fortier.
Oui.
Mr. Miao.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers. Yes. I did hear you, but could you please lower your headset for future? Voted yes. Mr. Williams.
No.
Mr. Baldinelli.
No.
Monsieur Martel.
No.
Mr. Genereux.
No.
Monsieur Savard Tremblay.
No.
Mr. Cannings.
Yes.
Okay. So the Mr. Sidhu's amendment carries. That carries.
Committee's ready for it, yeah.
Well, his motion carried.
The amendment's been passed, yeah.
The amendment's been passed. Is that the end of the issue?
So, is there further debate on the motion, or are we going to the vote?
Well, why would we vote on that when an amendment? I'm not sure that's right. Okay, call it out.
The motion as amended. Mr. Sidhu.
This is Mr. Savard Tremblay motion as amended by your amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan? Oui. Madame Fortier?
Oui.
Mr. Miao?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
No.
Mr. Baldinelli?
No.
Mr. Martel?
No.
Mr. Genereux?
No.
Monsieur Savard Tremblay?
Nope.
Mr. Cannings?
Yes.
The motion as amended carries. All right. Thank you all very much. Meeting adjourned.